So, Defactor, head of growth, you've had an amazing journey in the crypto space. So I kind of want to start there. We met, I think we spoke on the same panel, I believe, in Hong Kong. And here we are at DevCon. It's been an amazing few years. Bitcoin is now at
87.
What? Well, I mean, I wasn't going to say that.
It's on my phone screen, so I literally, every time I check the time, I can see it.
Let's say Bitcoin was 94 the other day.
Yes, it was indeed. Yeah.
Like yesterday, I think. So in terms of your own journey in the crypto space, how has that kind of worked out from your first entry point up until now? I want to know what has changed for you since you came into the industry?
Well, I came into the industry, I guess, kind of like on a part-time basis first. I was based in Taiwan 6 years ago, and I spent about 5 years in there. And my journey started in 2017 when my friends from Europe started to reach out and say, hey, can you go and find some GPUs for us for mining farms? I was like, oh, what's a mining farm? I don't know. And then so I figured out, the whole Bitcoin story and how mining is involved and why hardware was so important for that industry. And that was my part-time involvement because I was working in tech, living in Taiwan. Obviously tech is a big industry.
What did you do in tech?
I've always been doing marketing and business development. Like that's my kind of bread and butter. I've always been, the foreigner connecting Asia tech companies with the global market, I suppose.
So were you more on the hardware side or software side?
Software, actually, yeah.
Okay. So would you consider yourself as being part of the Web2 world and then kind of leaving that and entering the Web3 world?
Yeah. So I pretty much started in consumer tech, and then after kind of started that journey with the GPUs, I started to get involved with blockchain, going to conferences, and I was more and more kind of interested in fintech because obviously blockchain solutions and payments is very much like around the fintech industry, and Taiwan doesn't have that much of like financial institutions. So the fintech industry there is developing, but it's quite small, I would say. It's mostly AI, hardware, other different type of software. So when I was finishing my MBA, I was pretty much kind of like done from kind of like living in Taiwan point of view. And after I finished my MBA, I decided to move to Hong Kong and work in fintech. So I still worked in the Web2 space, but in traditional fintech, so traditional finance, technology companies like trading systems, ESG data, things like that. And then I think at that time I moved in 2019, so that was a bit still not too friendly to crypto, I would say, in Hong Kong, especially retail, like nothing, you can do nothing basically at that time. But it was a bit of a wild west, and people were still, developing companies. I think BitMEX was like one of the leading, derivatives exchanges at that time. The regulators still didn't come around in that space,
and so some of the logos yet.
So basically at that time I was still in TradFi technology, and then when it started to be a lot friendlier to crypto, I went to work full-time and started with a custody firm, which was very kind of like a deep dive because custody caters to different types of customers from the crypto space. So they're kind of like, working with galleries, working with NFTs, like whoever they are, a custodian to, as a very diverse kind of like clientele. And then right around the FTX time, when you've seen a lot of companies crash, just like funds or providers or anybody, and then that's when I came to know Defactor, and as a real-world asset tokenization tools and infrastructure provider, they kind of seemed to me that RWA as an industry, and especially a tech provider in that industry, that is something that hopefully might stay around for a bit because that's very relevant to traditional industries. And as much as we're at DevCon, and I am 3 years now in full-time crypto world, and then from 2017 part-time, so that's a while now in crypto terms, I guess, I still don't really consider myself like a native degen crypto person compared to all the many people that I've met this week. So for me, I'm still learning.
Compared to this week, none of us are degens.
Yeah, exactly. So when I looked at the RWA industry, I thought that is very relatable to me and to, if I can explain to my mom what I do, and we help companies tokenize real estate. My mom has been in real estate for most of her career.
So how quickly did your mom understand? How quickly did she get it?
I still don't think she gets it fully, but at least
does, right?
At least like it's kind of like, okay, you bring some technology that is going to make the world more efficient for traditional industry companies, so be it precious metals or real estate, or you are tokenizing Georgian wine, and then people can get involved into managing Georgian wine supply and distribution. So all of that is very much relatable for people from not Web3. So for me, I think that was something that triggered me to actually join this industry and join Defactor, because I think I couldn't be probably, talking about the layer 2s and the ZK rollups and things like that, because it's quite a small industry still. And for me, I always kind of looked at the big industries of loved expos since I was a kid, like really, and just going to actually.
No wonder you're so organized in terms of how you meet people and do business development, because you've been doing this since you were a kid in terms of like, I'm going to do it right that way.
Yeah, I really have been going to exhibitions my whole life. I don't know how I just end up, but I enjoy it so much, like going between different booths. Like I recently went to the Canton Fair in Guangzhou like a couple of weeks ago. That's the whole October they've been having it. It's the biggest China exhibition that manufactures everything.
Oh, wow.
And I went, they actually have 3 waves of different industries, like furniture is one wave, electronics is the other wave. I went during textile and furniture. It was a weekend also, so I just spent my free time, just going there and exploring for the first time. And I was like, man, I really miss this, like the old school way when you just hop around the booths and talk to people. And talking to traditional industry is really something that I find very meaningful, and if technology can help it, like I think that's a major progress.
I'm curious, do you consider yourself a technical person?
After DevCon, no, definitely. Well, I've never really coded or did any sort of... I did one bootcamp. Purely, I was based in Colorado for 3 months and I had nothing to do. And I was just working remotely and kind of like finishing my MBA thesis. And I was like, let me do a code camp and learn how to make a website. It was fantastic. I learned some JavaScript and I made a web page that actually had buttons and they worked, and that was so much pleasure to actually see your
really good,
actual product you produced.
CSS and HTML, I got it.
Yes, it was good. But now that I'm talking to so many developers, especially now seeing DevCon is massive for me. Like I was talking to you earlier about how in most of the conferences, even Token 2049 in Singapore was 20,000 attendees. It was big. But it was always making me feel like we have a small industry talking about the same technical things to each other at different conferences. And now, for the first time, DevCon actually made me feel that our industry is big, because it's only Ethereum-focused conference.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Let's not forget, right? Like it's not a Solana focused conference. It's just Ethereum, and that's so big already. And then the people there, they're not the salespeople that are there like, hey, so what do you do? And
they're the weirdos. They're the ones who go out and they do what they want to do. They are not there to, they beat to their own drum, basically. I think this is what I saw this week. Is I was curious specifically to get your opinion, because at Token 2049 in Singapore, there were like 900 side events, right? Yeah. I felt like 85% were RWA related, because I was signing up, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to skip RWAs, it means I'm basically not going to go to the side events. So what have you seen here at DevCon? As you say, people here, they wear face masks with durian face masks, and they wear, McDonald's hats, and there's a lot of crazy things happening here. People are expressing where they belong, I think, in the industry, and it's beautiful to see. So how do you see RWAs fit in here at DevCon? Are a lot of people talking about it? Is it something that they are still building for in the tech space? What is the on-the-ground chatter been in terms of RWAs?
I think here at DevCon, I have not seen a lot of presence for RWA, especially at the conference itself. I think people are building a lot more infrastructural, like deeper tech kind of things, because tokenization technology, as long as, we're also a provider and a tech infrastructure, but it's not building different layers or interoperability, like that word I always struggle.
However, a conversation that you feel is happening a lot?
Yeah, so I think from tokenization point of view, I think the tech stack that we are using and the RWA industry is using is fairly, I don't want to say simple or like easy to figure out, but basically tokenizing an asset on a particular chain is a few kind of, steps.
Yeah. But it's the high, what do you do people usually that end up getting involved with that, as opposed to the guys that are just building.
Yeah, and then the solutions that they're building here, I feel like they're a lot more like, maybe infrastructural projects that are actually building for another layer, for another infrastructure. So it's kind of like deeper tech, I would say.
Yeah.
From whom I've I've spoken to, it's a lot less of like, hey, we're focusing on this industry like real estate, and then we're building tech for it.
Right.
Because RWA is still very much focused on the traditional industry, and then they're trying to use tech for, giving access to this real estate in Dubai to like people in Latin America or Southeast Asia so that they can invest. It's a lot more related to the consumer experience and investment, whereas
Exactly.
like DevCon is very much like deep tech, let's build something, right?
Right. I mean, just the amount of hackathons that happened this week. And I mean, people, I spoke to devs hacking at different events, and they were literally going from place to place, and they were building this over there and that over there. And, for us, I think in the business space, we approach things a little bit differently. There has to be a ROI, and, is it a good use of your time? And is this the most efficient thing you could be doing? And what's the bottom line? And so many of them, they were just having fun, just seeing where it can go. I feel like we've lost that spirit of playing around and seeing what can happen.
Yeah.
How do you find the innovation aspect in the RWA space? Because in DeFi, of course, over the last however many years, we've had our ups and downs. There's been a lot of innovation, but then there's also been a lot of, let's say, sacrifices we've had to make in other ways, right? Like we've seen the innovation, but it's massive volatility and it doesn't have a good reputation. Whereas RWAs, of course, is not known as being as innovative, but it's also known as being much safer in terms of being a risky, really just pastime, not even like an investment. I mean, think about it. If you're in DeFi, every time you have a transaction, if you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of putting your funds at risk. So how is innovation looking in the RWA space in a safer but perhaps more sustainable, stable sort of way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to add to the previous question as well, like when I met RWA projects here, they're mostly at side events, and we actually did host a side event yesterday, which was quite successful. I think there were 70 people that came about.
Awesome. That's a lot for 900 events at DevCon where no one can get anywhere in the traffic. 70 is a lot.
And it also rained yesterday. So
and that's triple points.
Yeah, we had like full 3 hours booked by people, like they were there, and everybody mingled. And I would say like maybe 90% were RWA actually.
Okay.
But they were a lot of early stage. So I think the innovation is happening in the sense that people are starting to create these projects. A lot of them I had spoken to, they were like, oh, we're still under the radar, we're just launching, or we're fundraising. And I think I would describe in such a way the full year that has been for us. So the projects that we're speaking to, those that we met in Dubai for Token 2049 until Singapore Token 2049, they are just fundraising, trying to figure out the legal part. So I think a lot of projects are coming into the space, and I guess that's somewhat innovative in the sense that people are trying to launch new products, launch new projects that are based off of real-world assets. But I think the innovation in the real-world asset space is not so much technical as much as it is business models and how to structure the product.
Right.
Because a lot of like there was one guy, actually speaking of hackathons, he did a hackathon and he's from Latin America. And I met him a couple of days at the Chainlink event, and basically, I don't know if I could quote him, but basically he said that real estate tokenization is a scam. And I was like, why is that a scam? And then he said that, well, in Latin America, in our country, it's, there's scams everywhere. And we were also talking particularly about the Brazilian market. And he was like, well, in Brazil, like anything is a scam, basically, like in traditional industries also. But in Web3, especially tokenizing real estate, like how do you know your token actually represents that real estate? Who goes and vets that there's actual property rights behind your token? And that's why he wouldn't believe it. And he wouldn't say that the RWA projects would actually take off. And he was coding something at a hackathon, and I was asking him, well, now that you've won the money, like, is that going to be a project? And he said, no, like, I'm just participating in hackathons because it's cool to build, you get money, like, in the end, you get your prize, and then, you had a great experience, you've built something, it's your portfolio, but no, I'm not gonna take it to make an actual business out of it because like it's just not going to survive, and then our market is not ready, and then it's not safe, and people don't believe and trust it. So there's a lot of like barriers on the Web 2 side rather than the technology. So I wouldn't say the innovation in the RWA space is happening around the tech and the particular, tokenization is like fairly straightforward. Like we know the technology, it's existed actually, it used to be called STOs, security tokens. Like it's somewhat figured out already. And for now, I think the key pain point and the bottleneck is to figure out the business model and how to structure the project. So if you, for example, tokenize real estate, like in a lot of jurisdictions, tokenization of the actual deed is not actually recognized by like the cadastral office or whatever that's called in the house department of that particular city. But what people do is they create a special purpose vehicle, the SPV, which is a holding company that would like hold a portfolio of different properties. And then as a token holder, you have a share in that property portfolio. So you can get yield from all of these rental incomes that come from that property and the property portfolio. So as a token holder, you can still benefit from it, but in the end of the day, are you gonna say that, okay, my kids are gonna inherit a piece of land somewhere?
Right.
No, like maybe that's not the case and you don't actually own it, but your participation comes from that rental income and getting the yield from that property. And that's the innovative part to me in the RWA space. People trying to figure out how to use this technology to create fractional ownership, to get more access, to deliver products that are from the developed world to emerging markets, to essentially let investors, retail investors mostly, benefit from it. And then the institutions, that's like a different story. I think the institutions demand a more robust and obviously more structured, regulated products. So that is happening, but of course takes a lot more time.
I have to say, I find it really fascinating that you highlighted that innovation is also just trying these things out, adopting them, bringing them to market, adopting them. Because I think very often we kind of stare ourselves blind in, especially in the Web3 space, when there's like a new technology every 5 minutes and it's super cool and like everyone's trying like new things on it and making money based off of doing those things. I think we have very often a bright, shiny object syndrome. Like, oh my God, I also want this. And so I think a lot of the time we chase innovation.
Last step that they're trying to focus on it more now, but I think technology has had so much attention first for so many years that we created so many startups that really maybe don't have a target customer. Or maybe there is a user that is going to get excited about the product, but they're not going to pay for it. And the business perspective is always, okay, are you creating something that somebody at the end of the day will pay for? And if it's not them, and it's like how do they say it? Like if you don't know who is paying for it, you're the data, you're the one.
Yeah.
So at least if that model exists, that's already great. But if in the end of the day no one is paying, if not the companies are paying for that product to be in front of your eyes because you're a consumer, then you really didn't create a business, in my opinion, personally.
Right.
Because I think technology is there to help us streamline processes, improve traditional industries, improve product consumption generally. And if it's not doing that, then sure, it's cool to have a new shiny thing, but in the end of the day, who's going to use it? Like, I think the whole meaning behind creating innovation and creating innovative products, for me, it's to change the consumer experience to the better.
That is the perfect final question or final topic to end off on. I'll start with a little story. One of our team members was here for DevCon. She just left a couple of days ago, and this is her first time. She's new to Web3. It's her first time at a Web3 event ever.
Quite overwhelmed.
Exactly. And she works in marketing. She has a background in marketing. Noella, hey. And so we were, after so many days of talking to so many people and, her brain is exploding with all of this. And she says to me, now I realize Web3 is all about community. And that was such a powerful, I'm even getting goosebumps because that was such a powerful moment for me, because we all in this industry talk about community as a buzzword. But I think we've forgotten that it's actually an experiential thing. We have to experience community. We have to allow community to experience what we are building for them. And so I would love to have your thoughts. It's not easy marketing in the RWA space, but it's also not easy marketing technology as a whole, or Web3, or anything that is new or early or weird or different. So you've built an amazing career really as a bridge. And the reason I asked you earlier if you're technical, because I was listening to your background and I was thinking to myself, as a woman who also came into the space in 2017, I'm still in awe of you, because you sound like you've been in all these really highly scary technical places, right? But then I know similarly for myself that other people look at me and go, well, you must be very technical. So I want to know if you think of, your career that you've had over however many years in so many different industries. What have you learned that now you are applying in Web3, and that's kind of the North Star, the compass that you go by in terms of who are we building for, why are we doing it, and how are we doing it?
Wow, that's a really deep question.
Well, I have to make the last one a deep one.
So I guess in terms of the career, so I spent 10 years doing business development mostly, so talking to, outreaching to customers and predominantly I think businesses, so I'm more from a B2B space. And community is something that I started to work on mostly since I'm in Web3 actually, and it's fascinating, but it's also at the same time it's very relatable for me as somebody who comes from the technology space, because in the end of the day, when you work in a smaller company, like a smaller tech firm, what you do is, yes, you're in the business development marketing, but you're also wearing many hats because it's a startup. And I used to have my own startup. We actually did a whole Accelerator program for 2 months in London. That was great. We lived in the castle.
Sounds really great.
That
if you're going to live somewhere, live in a castle,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, that was an amazing experience. So I did a lot of product-related stuff at that time. And even through my whole career, like some sort of QA, like quality assurance, like testing the product, and then like hand-holding the customer when they test the product. All of that is very much related to the product, even though you're the the blah blah person, like the one that's talking about the product to the wider audience. You still need to understand it. You still go through a few steps when you really dig deeper and you actually understand what the consumer experience would be, because if you don't know it, like how can you sell something like that, right?
They always say that if you can't explain something to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think roles like this really helped you. Listen, if this person can't understand me, it doesn't matter how much I understand it, they still can't understand me.
Yeah, exactly. And then having these steps to understand the product and deliver that message to people, I think that has been the experience that really now has helped me use some of those skills when I talk to the community, and be it, on X Spaces where we met originally, or an in real life event, or it's a hackathon workshop, or it's just a Twitter thread where people are asking us, and I have an amazing marketing team. These guys are constantly on top of our socials and trying to engage with the audience, like really figuring out what's interesting for the audience. And the whole industry of Telegram chats, like, oh my god, I don't even know why we created this for ourselves in this industry, but Telegram is like a whole world of community management.
There's even now Telegram CRM, which I've been praying for a long time.
I met one guy from...
That's the same guy, Dice.
Dice, yes.
So shout out Dice.
Shout out Dice, yes.
You got your business development is good.
Yeah, so I think these kind of things are definitely helpful, but it's a whole new world. It's not a HubSpot CRM. It's a very different beast compared to traditional industries and how they manage their client relationships. So I think the community aspect became like a major thing, even if you're just doing B2B tech sales, basically. And I guess your question in terms of the main skills and the takeaway, how to navigate through that, I think the number one rule for me is always to listen and to see that feedback. And as a startup, I've worked mostly in startups, and I think the biggest one was like maybe 150 people, and they already grew to that by maybe year 5 or so. So it's still kind of like a startup became scale up sort of.
Right.
So all of these different teams, I think the main lesson is that you create something, you fail fast, you learn from it, then you move on. It's pivoting is like the best advice.
It's oxygen for the blood. It's part of how it is. Yeah,
you change, you evolve, you listen to your consumer and you adapt. And I think that's the main skill that I'm using when I do community management or I meet different communities and try to engage with them.
I just want to highlight what you said, about your wonderful team doing social media and engagement, seeing what people want. And I think that's really what it all comes down to. We know what we want them to want, but we don't actually know what they want until we ask them and we wait for a response. And so, it's been amazing having this time with you. I know, over all of the time that I've known you, that you're incredibly committed and dedicated and passionate to making all of these things that we have been discussing happen in real life. So it's been a privilege. I'm glad that we were able to do this. And looking forward to the future of RWAs.
I'm really glad we got to catch up in Bangkok.
I know, it's amazing.
This is always the most random, occasions. But yeah, thanks for having me.
It was amazing. Thank you. And where can people follow you?
Well, people can find Defactor on X. We also have a Telegram group, and myself, obviously on LinkedIn, Anastasia. I don't know if you can find many Anastasias in the RWA space. But yeah, find me and find Defactor on LinkedIn. I'm head of growth, again, based in Hong Kong. Anybody, shout out to Hong Kong Web3 community. Say hi to us when you come to Consensus maybe in February. So keep in touch until then, for sure.
A lot of traveling up ahead, and I hear.
Finally, people will come to us. Like, you know, I'm super happy about the Consensus because finally the whole world will come to us, not us flying somewhere.
Exactly. It has been an absolute privilege. Please do follow Anastasia. She is just a wealth of knowledge, definitely not only on RWAs. I think if I sat you down and started talking about any topic under the sun, I would walk out of here knowing 100x more than I did when we sat down. Thank you for this amazing time. And Nadja Bester with Altcoin Observer and AdLunam over and out.